to wait for like 20 minutes because I couldn't do it.
Just to round things out, we've got the Amazon labor union and rights does not believe in any ordered notion of justice, protest that we are violating his rights, understand that he is lying to try to persuade people who are not closely following the political scene that some injustice has been perpetrated against him. We must stay the course and be completely unflinching in the pursuit of justice against these enemies of civilization.
Written as is supposed enemies of civilization often seem to just be people calling out the administration for their abuses of power. You're going to have to wait to see where all this develops on the number of funds. And then also when you talk about these protests in because there, you have this fake political party that started as a joke just a couple of months ago. It's now behind the scenes. Years. And it's actually all thanks to this controversial example of dozens of suicides. And even people who are part of this movement now being tear gassed and beaten in the street. Very notable, I will say, it is not clear is less about replacing cooking and more about having a great meal ready at home, which is not going to happen. Hey, head to factormeals.com/Franco50off and use code Franco50off to get 50% off plus free daily greens per box. New subscriptions only while supplies last through September 2026. See the website for details. And then diving right back into the news, we've got to talk about this whole Air Force One confidential informant situation, because you have Trump's Department of Justice trying to find out who the sources were for the New York Times journalists and their coverage about the security concerns about the new Air Force One or the Boeing 747-8, given the Trump language law. And earlier this month, the New York Times reported confidential sources confirmed that federal officials had some serious concerns about the security of the new jet. One of the big things being that it doesn't have some of the defensive features that the previous jet had, like advanced anti-missile capabilities. Something they get this report saying was mostly thanks to Trump's insistence that the plane join the fleet as quickly as possible, because it's said to just be so much more luxurious. And with all this, you have Frank Kendall, the former Air Force Secretary, saying time to permit all the normal Air Force One modifications, so some mix of security, communications, and support is missing, adding that he was surprised the Qatari plane was taken overseas as quickly as it was, especially considering the escalating war in Iran. So yet that, coupled with the reporting also citing confidential sources that Trump switched from the Qatari plane back to the old Air Force One when he left Turkey unpaid, apparently really pissing Trump off, because he ended up ordering FBI Director Ketch Patel to oversee an investigation to find out who those confidential sources were, which then led to an avalanche of subpoenas. Several times journalists would serve subpoenas and tried to order them to testify before a federal grand jury, even had some. They even had federal agents show up at their door. The Times, in pushing back against the administration, essentially telling the DOJ where they could shove it. Specifically saying the appearance of federal law enforcement agents on the doorstep of news reporters should shock the conscience of any American who believes in the Constitution and the press freedom it protects. Saying this brazen act should be seen as nothing more than an attempt to prevent the public from knowing what is happening in their country by intimidating journalists from doing their job. The DOJ responded by saying it's not reporters they're targeting, rather sources, or rather as they described them, those leaking classified information. The spokeswoman for the department added, "We value and appreciate the important role that the press plays in this country, but DOJ also plays an important role to make sure that the people entrusted with our nation's secrets do what they're supposed to do with that information." In fact, now it's reported that we just started communicating with a whole new level, beginning to see several journalists text messages, actually not just from the journalists themselves, but also from their
it's just, I mean, it's just slightly slower, obviously.
Yeah! We've done the, beginning, it's no different. You could just go slightly faster if you have like a plastic or whatever.
Yep. But also, just face tank everything.
Too much credit. This is at
so.
most
For,
broken
like, the
clock
backs.
being right twice a day territory, and a lot of her criticism actually appears to rest on.
Oh, wait, not hip. Hip is only for lower body. It was shoulder width
She also argued that many people believe Carlson
that has
is
that
converted
will
because
it is enhanced well.
recently bought a house in Qatar and
Slightly, which is small.
craziness aside, the criticisms of Tucker, they are valid here, especially because this is by no means
So are you gonna reserve or no?
realistic right now.
Anyway, he was saying how you can look at, like, because I was telling him how Mommy said the Sienna, the new one, was like smaller. And then he's like, oh, you can look at like the age and it'll tell you like the volume, right? So then the newer one has the volume, the old one doesn't. But it tells you like the shoulder room or like room or whatever. But the shoulder room for the old one in like say like the back, the third row is 61 inches. In the new one it is 58.5. Yeah. So it's slightly smaller, so it is inside. Yeah. So you know how you said you look inside, I said it looks smaller.
I think it's because the frame is probably bigger.
Yeah, so they have a full house full of stuff. They have the pool or whatever it is. Yeah, I was telling them Mario was telling me, oh, you can look at like the volume inside the car. The new one has the volume inside the car, but the old one doesn't. But at least it'll tell you like leg length, like shoulder width, how much space you have. So for the shoulder width, the old one is 61 inches. The new one is 58 inches. So you lost a couple inches.
Can you look can you check the trunk space? Mommy says it's smaller, but I think it is smaller, yeah.
It probably is.
The red top 20 years look that quality. Look big, even smaller. One day, right? Oh! Now you have to press the creation button. I press how many times? Those 2 days beginning, I press fine, it's on by and always. But when I forgot the time or what, I make sure.
Oh yeah, if you turn it on after the time of 2 hours before your lunch time, it will not work. So you have to turn it on at least like 2 hours and like 5 minutes before. Then it'll start heating up your food. Otherwise, it will not heat up your food.
Oh, even late than whatever before that is not on?
Yes. So if you set the time for 11:45, but you do not turn it on at 9:45, it will not. If you do it anytime after that, it will not turn on. have to say you have to turn it on at like say 9:30.
So when you turn it on late, it's not gonna be on.
Yeah.
So it's break, you have to drop it late like this.
Yes. So you start break at 9:45. You have to be before it's like.
And so far, you've had to raise over $200,000 in one victim against over 40 residents living in makeshift cabins,
It's specifically
including 12
2 hours.
kids that many people argue are being
Open at
actively
least 2 hours
indoctrinated. And
before.
at least among their goals is installing a Hitler 2.0.
So it's natural that you get excited thinking about, oh, well, maybe we'll get like Hitler 2.0. So it's
So you mean you have big kids that you cannot do it right away.
You can, at that point, you can like set the time for a little bit later. But you have to remember it. Let's say, you have to now set the alarm clock to but then you'll probably forget to turn it back. But in a way, that might be fine because you'll remember it earlier and you turn it off.
Friction and adding that she didn't care about fashion policy.
Cargo volume. The old one in the trunk.
All these things have this group of fighting to keep private. Then actually for your last story today, someone is raising taxes. You've got Democrats there worried about the economy. Well, the Democrats are statewide raising taxes. Hurry, open, long shot.
I don't know what cargo volume is behind the second part.
If you take down the chairs.
Cargo volume behind the front seats in the Sienna was 149.
Why are you yelling?
I don't know. Anyway, the new one is only 101. So you lost like 40.
Story now.
Behind the third seat, which is essentially nothing. 30, 43, 81, 36.
Yeah, there's stuff back there. You didn't look at it. It's gonna be a lot less, that's for sure.
And that, my friend, beautiful bastard, is the end of your Tuesday Philip DeFranco show. But I've actually got a bonus news story that we need to dive into together around the Meta AI layoffs lawsuit. It's in my eyes insane, wild, worth the time. You can click on the screen here, or I got a brief description. But whatever you do, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been called in. I'll give you faces, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.
What is the second best starter Pokemon? Oh, you're wondering why we don't want to know about the best starter Pokemon? Don't worry about that. Nobody cares about that. What a weird question. What the people really want to know is who's the second best. Now, to be clear, this video is about competitive Pokemon. So if your favorite starter Pokemon is not here, that doesn't mean I hate it. It just means that the only reason I'd ever use it is if I was trying to farm YouTube content. There are 6 starter Pokemon that have been good to varying degrees in competitive Pokemon. So obviously, we're going to talk about 5 of them. All starter Pokemon have some things in common, most notably their abilities. All fire-type starters get the ability Blaze, the water types get Torrent, and the grass types get Overthrow. So all different things, these abilities are effectively all the same. It powers the Pokemon's fire, water, or grass type moves when the Pokemon drops to low health. These abilities, to put it nicely, suck. While they do come up every once in a while, for the most part, if your Pokemon is low enough HP that the ability is actually active, it's also low enough HP that you can take a trip to the Pokemon Center expeditiously. The good news is that every starter Pokemon gets access to a second ability, and these hidden abilities determine a lot of how good each starter Pokemon can be in competitive play. For example, let's start with Primarina. Do people like Primarina? I feel like I generally have a pretty good idea of like how popular different starter Pokemon are, but for Primarina, I actually have no idea. Primarina is a Pokemon that was introduced in Generation 7, and it's the only starter Pokemon from Alola we're going to be talking about today. Primarina is a water and fairy type Pokemon, which is really good. Even though water and fairy don't have a ton of inherent synergy beyond water canceling out fairy's weakness to heal, it turns out when you stick 2 of the best types in the game together, you get something really good. Primarina only has 3 weaknesses, a rarity among Pokemon with 2 types. And even better, it resists 6 types and is immune to a 7th. Compare this to my favorite Pokemon, Executor, and its 7 weaknesses, including a double weakness to Bug, and you'll soon see that not all silly Pokemon are created equal. Primarina is one of the only Pokemon in the game that resists all of the moves from both Worship Move, a Pokemon Distortion World bent on traumatizing every competitive player. And unlike Decidueye, who made an appearance on my worst starter Pokemon video, Primarina's ability actually does something useful. It's called Liquid Voice, and it turns all of Primarina's sound-based moves into water-type moves, regardless of their original type. If you're not sure what a sound-based move is, don't worry, they didn't just add in another type that you've never heard of. Well, unless you haven't heard of the Stellar type by now. Some moves make sound, and for the most part, that doesn't change anything. It comes up sometimes because there is an ability called Soundproof, which prevents all damage from sound-based moves, and sound moves ignore Substitute, plus a couple other niche interactions, but for the most part, whether a move is sound-based or not is kind of like a tree falling in a forest when nobody's around. It doesn't really matter all that
Doesn't even
much,
tell
but it
you.
does matter to Primarina.
It only tells you behind the second row seat.
For what? Grand Highlander?
Yeah.
It's probably because third is optional to have up.
Anyway, even then, behind the second row seat is 57.9, and then the Sienna is 75.2. You lost the fucking. What is that? 17 cubic feet.
drawbacks in play, it suddenly became terrifying. In Trick Room, a slow Pokemon moved before fast ones, and with Dynamax and a Life Orb, Primarina could blow through teams before they could react. It also helped that using the Water-type move, Max Geyser, changed the weather to rain, powering up future Water-type moves by a whopping 50%. This is actually one of the few times that one of the starter-exclusive moves was used in competitive play. See, Max moves were stronger versions of regular moves, but how much stronger depended on how strong the base move was. A Pokemon using Max Flare based off of Ember is going to be a lot weaker than Max Flare based off of Overheat. Every starter Pokemon can learn a move that's basically a starter-type version of Hyper Beam. In Primarina's case, that move is Hydro Cannon. I mentioned it earlier in how it takes a recharge turn, but when Hydro Cannon turns into Max Geyser, it keeps its high base power, but loses the drawback. It's worth noting that while Primarina was very strong, it only remained relevant for a short period of time. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, when it placed second at the first Players' Cup, the online tournament that replaced the official circuit when events stopped. It is a good Pokemon, but compared to the insane power level of some more memorable Pokemon, it does struggle to keep up. And you might struggle to keep up with this channel if you don't subscribe. I post a video every single Saturday, and if you want to be kept up to date, subscribing is a great way to tell YouTube to recommend them so you never miss an upload. Okay, so Primarina isn't the second best starter Pokemon. Maybe that makes sense, because it also isn't that iconic. What about a more memorable starter Pokemon, like, I don't know, Blaziken? Blaziken is a fire and fighting type Pokemon that tends to perform better in single battles, but it has still had some success in the official competitive format. Unlike Primarina, who tends to perform well as a balanced Pokemon, capable of both dealing damage and punching hits, Blaziken is here for one thing and one thing only: damage. This actually isn't entirely because of Blaziken's typing. While fire and fighting is definitely a type combination geared towards offense, Blaziken only has one more weakness than Primarina and the same number of resistances, so it does lack in immunity. And this is nice because even though picking Blaziken means you're comfortable with it going down quickly, the decent defensive spread means if it's paired up against the right Pokemon, it can be like the last guest at a party and just refuse to go home. But the real strength of this typing is its offenses. There is no single type in the game that can resist both fire and fighting, making it very difficult to stop Blaziken from blowing something up. Of course, the typing is only part of the equation. The arguably bigger factor in Blaziken's offensive nature are the stats and the ability. While it has totally fine natural moves, it definitely isn't great. Its attack and special attack are clearly intended to be its focal point, but that's not addressing the elephant in the room: Blaziken's speed stats. For an offensive Pokemon, it's just way too slow. And it's also just in this awkward middle ground where it's too slow to keep up with the really fast Pokemon, but too fast to be effective in Trick Room. But that's not factoring in
Usually on Thursdays, they usually stand
one of the craziest abilities in the game, giving the Pokemon a, okay, well, it gives it a speed boost every single turn, because it's not checking. This is one of very, very few abilities that can boost a Pokemon's stats without some condition being met, and for good reason. Stat boosts are a huge deal in competitive Pokemon, and so for the most part, getting one requires using a move or giving up your item. That might make it a bit easier to see how being able to raise speed, arguably the most important stat, at the end of every single turn with no drawback is completely absurd. So Blaziken had a little use over the years, normally with either a focus stat to help keep it alive or a life orb to boost its damage. It was able to make use of both its offensive stats by using moves like Overheat and Superpower, with each move lowering one of Blaziken's offensive stats after connecting, which was less costly because then Blaziken could just switch to the other one. But this is the whole story. Blaziken wouldn't have made this list. Fortunately for the Flaming Chicken, there's more to this tale. Specifically, Mega Blaziken. Mega Blaziken is pretty much just a strict upgrade, assuming you don't mind sacrificing your item and your Mega Evolution. Every single one of its stats is better than Blaziken, and its attack gets a huge boost. It's also one of the few Mega Evolutions that can KO Mega Kangaskhan, the most used Mega, which matters because Mega Blaziken can also outspeed Mother after a speed boost. Oh yeah, lots of Pokemon have their abilities changed when Mega evolving, but Blaziken was one of the few that got to keep its original ability. And good
Oh, it's over there. Never mind. No one did check it.
any other ability aside from like Wonder Guard, which would probably have been worse. With the extra bulk from Mega Evolution, Mega Blaziken felt a lot tankier. And while it could still go down quickly, there were also battles where it stuck around turn after turn.
Oh man, if I
Threatening to deal huge damage
not if I basically have been elected, I have to keep up with AI knowledge.
The Nashville Open, a tournament that took place at the 2018 World Championships and was chock full of world competitors.
Honestly, I really don't care if other people use it. If they don't think they need to use it, it's fine with
Both
me.
Blaziken and Primarina were starter Pokemon that
Because in a way, they're kind of mandating that they need to use it. But at least they don't have token or like token usage. Like, stuff.
competitive threats
These
at
facts
least at
fine.
one point. So let's kick off the
But they
big
do
dogs by
want
talking
people
about a
to
big
use it.
frog, Venusaur.
I feel like that is okay.
Poison-type Pokemon that just
If they want people to
sucks
just
play
use it.
against. As I'm recording this, I am
So
currently
long as they do not
playing
mandate,
championships and,
like, usage
like if there's one Pokemon
amount
I don't want
per
to play
month.
against, it's probably Venusaur.
That would
Just
be
like Blaziken and
devastating.
Primarina, its ability
Price-wise, I should
is
say.
key to its success. Chlorophyll. This ability doubles Venusaur's speed stat if the strong sunlight weather condition is active, effectively allowing it to outspeed every other Pokemon in the game. But Venusaur's special attack stat isn't that high, so why is it moving before other Pokemon such a big deal? That has to do with the move that Venusaur learns that should be familiar to anyone who's ever caught a Butterfree, Sleep Powder. Sleep Powder puts whatever it hits to sleep, but it only hits 75% of the time, meaning using it is a huge gamble. That being said, if it does connect, the target can be unable to move for as many as 3 turns, which is a huge setback. It's not easy to get around Venusaur either. It's decently bulky, and even if you have a strong, super effective attack to hit it with, you need to get around both Sleep Powder and the Focus Sash item it often carries, requiring you to hit it twice to knock it out. Venusaur is really great synergy with Pokemon that set the sunlight up, because not only does it hit the water, ground, and rock-type Pokemon for super effective damage that give fire-type Pokemon trouble, and it doubles its speed with strong sunlight, but the fire-type Sunsetters also hit grass-type Pokemon for super effective damage, and grass is the only type in the game that is immune to Sleep Powder. Even if the fire-type can't help for whatever reason, Venusaur's secondary poison typing gives it an advantage against other grass types. Venusaur's base form has had a ton of success over the years, and was especially dominant back in the final year of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Pairing Venusaur with Pokemon like Primal Groudon, as it turns out, is really scary, since buying a single turn for the land monster to attack for free could often result in so much damage that the opponent could never recover. But those of you who are paying close attention and not just using this video as background noise to help you fall asleep, you are so valid, by the way, sweet dreams, might have noticed that I said Venusaur's base form. And that's because Venusaur has 2 other forms, both of which were more impactful than its base form. Mega Venusaur was the more tame of the 2. While it does give up chlorophyll, it becomes much tankier and gains the ability to nick back, turning off weaknesses to fire and ice. This Mega Evolution continues to morph the way that Venusaur plays, turning it into the super tank rather than the normal, fast and frail disruption it likes to build. Now, instead of needing Venusaur to hit a Sleep Powder or risk being wiped off the map, Venusaur can instead focus on sticking around and dealing damage over time. It can even lead into a healing build if wanted. I won a regional with Giga Drain, Elite Team Mega Venusaur that can whittle down my opponent's health over time, and other players had success using the move Synthesis to recover 50% of Venusaur's health at a time. What really makes Mega Venusaur so good, in my opinion, is the fact that you're not forced to Mega Evolve it. If you wanted to use Venusaur as a Chlorophyll Disruptor Pokemon, you could bring Mega Venusaur but just not Mega Evolve it. In 2015, the German National Championships were won by a player with both Mega Charizard Y, who could set the sun up, and Mega Venusaur. If you wanted to use Mega Charizard and Space Venusaur, you could do that, but you could also leave Charizard behind and lead into Mega Venusaur as a tank in certain matchups. But neither regular Venusaur or Mega Venusaur were anywhere near as scary as Gigantamax Venusaur. This Pokemon was a menace, and despite being around for only about 2 years, it quickly took over competitive play. Gigantamax Venusaur plays very similarly to regular Venusaur, which I guess makes sense because it's literally just a bigger version of it. And unlike Mega Venusaur, which is a permanent transformation, Gigantamax ends after only 3 turns. But don't let that fool you, those 3 turns are extremely impactful. What made Gigantamax Venusaur so scary was its access as one of only 4 Pokemon to the scariest Gigantamax move in the game. This move had a different name depending on which Pokemon used it. For Venusaur, it was called G-Max Vine Lash. This move was completely absurd. If you hit a single Pokemon with it a single time, even through Protect, both your opponent's Pokemon will lose 6 their HP over the next 4 turns unless they were a grass type. If you were to take back damage from this effect, you would lose your team's total health as a passive effect of using a move one time. It was also virtually impossible to special defense, making it even harder to get rid of. Gigantamax Venusaur became a top threat the instant it entered the game. It won the North American International Championship, multiple regional championships, and one of the Players' Cups.
Oh yeah, I listened to Graveyard of the Dead's music. It's definitely not Sea of Greed.
Instead, hugely patterned to disrupt, made it even harder to handle. Gigantamax Venusaur was so aggressive that it makes other forms of Venusaur look tame. Which is saying something, but Venusaur isn't the only starter Pokemon on this list with multiple forms. What, either I was gonna make a video about starter Pokemon and not talk about game
Do they reuse music places?
Yeah.
Charizard is similar to Venusaur
In like the lower
and
ones,
has
right?
three forms
No.
that we're gonna talk about today, but it differs in that one of those forms is not its base
In
form.
all
Base
levels
Charizard
of
is
that.
just bad. I did bring it to a regional one time, so I guess I'm qualified to say that. Its typing isn't awful, but it has a lot of weaknesses and will disintegrate if it touches a rock. And its stats leave much to be desired. It's not tanky, it's not that fast, and it isn't strong enough to justify everything else. Luckily for the Lizard, Game Freak wasn't content to just let Charizard wallow in mediocrity. Instead of starting with Pokemon XY, they gave it some help. Let's start by talking about Mega Charizard X. This is never very popular, but it was very strong. It's a fire and dragon type Pokemon that gains the ability to Tough Claws, powering up many of its physical attacks. Fire and Dragon is good typing, as fire is strong against the fairy and steel type Pokemon that Dragon struggles with, and Dragon resists the water moves that Dragon fire types. Mega Charizard X became a lot tankier to supplement its better defensive typing, and also gained a ton of attack, letting it actually work as a
One more
physical
Fox
attacker. I
Fire
won for the World
King
Championships
song.
twice, and I won a regional with it back in 2008.
Sorry, also
Mega
no.
Charizard X is that although it was very strong, its most broken move was
Are you still doing it on Mage?
What?
Mage?
What do you mean?
Character?
No, I'm an archer.
You know what that is? With nothing.
Obviously, it's the easiest one. I'm an hour 44 in. I'm at 38. Should be another hour and a half probably. Once I get to 50, it'll be really fast, but 40s will be really slow.
Having a powerful fire type that can set the sun for itself turns out isn't pretty strong. Charizard Y had an advantage over other weather setters. by
Ian,
being
all
effective.
Minecraft stuff.
Normally, if a weather setting Pokemon is already on the field, another
I have
weather
eaten
setter can
most-
just switch in and turn off the
most,
weather.
Why are you eating foods?
Cause why not?
Kyogre can switch in and turn the sun to rain.
I can't do it in the other ones because there's a bit too many, but at least this one I can do.
Charizard Y. If Charizard's on the field, the
There's some stuff that I can't get though.
Polytoad, the weather would turn to rain, and then Charizard would Mega Evolve and turn the weather to sun. In other words, it's nearly impossible to turn the sun off if Charizard is on the field in its base form. Sun is a really dangerous weather condition because unlike sand or snow or hail, the sun weather condition powers up a type of move offensively. Specifically, and this is probably a shock, it powers up fire type moves. To try and balance the game, Game Freak made sure to build in weaknesses of the sun settings, whether it be a low special attack stat like Groudon and Ninetales, or a low speed stat like Torkoal. The special attack stat matters a lot on Pokemon with the ability Drought, because sun-boosted fire moves that can hit multiple targets, like Heat Wave and Eruption, can be super oppressive. And not only are there no spread physical fire-type moves, but you can always lower the power of physical attackers with the Intimidate ability. Mega Charizard Y is the one exception to this rule. It's extremely strong and fast enough to be a threat. It can spread damage with Heat Wave or remove a key threat with Overheat or Fire Blast. And it gets the move Solar Beam, which hits the water and rock types that resist its fire type moves. Mega Charizard Y was a top Mega Evolution for most of the time it was in the game, sometimes being as good as one of the 3 best Mega Evolutions. It won multiple regional and national level events and finished second at the World Championships in 2014, ultimately losing to Pachirisu. But neither Mega Charizard was anywhere near as good as Gigantamax Charizard. See, Charizard was one of the other Pokemon that got access to that broken max move effect I mentioned earlier. In this case, it's called G-Max Wildfire. But whereas Venusaur was threatening because it was too fast and bulky to stop it from getting the move off, Charizard was terrifying for another reason. His attack was one of the single strongest moves of all time. That might seem a little strange because Gigantamax Charizard just has all of Charizard's base stats minus the HP, which is just doubled. And I already mentioned how base Charizard is actually kind of bad. But here's the thing. Gigantamax Charizard was often used in good class the fire type Hyper Beam. So we're already starting with a move that's pretty strong. And just like Primarina, it doesn't have to worry about the downside of the recharge turn when it's in its Gigantamax form. And then we start adding in Ultra form item that Charizard would often hold. Another 50% stronger for the strong sunlight, and another 50% because of Charizard's ability, Solar Power. Solar Power increases the special attack stat of the user by a whopping 50% if the strong sunlight is active. It causes the Pokemon to lose 10% of their health every single turn while the sun is up. It's a strong ability, but I would say it's overall pretty well balanced because of the HP loss. Except if the Pokemon is Dynamax, that HP loss is halved. And that's true of the Life Orb recoil as well. You see, these effects cause a Pokemon to lose 10% of their base health, not their Dynamax health. And whereas the damage adds up pretty quickly when you're taking 10% per effect, it feels a lot less meaningful when it's only 5% and you have twice as much health as normal. With all these multipliers in play, Gigantamax Charizard can KO even Pokemon that resist it. And that's not even factoring in the G-Max Wildfire effect, which, again, causes both opponents to lose a 6 of their HP every turn for the next
No Ghost Slime for me.
And that's not all. Gigantamax Charizard is the only form of Charizard to actually make good use of its flying typing. The single best base max move in the game was Max Air. In order to prevent offensive best moves from taking over the game, the game creates caps to the base power of the moves that they stats. Lower than other max moves, that's why Max Bubble and Max Boost is so rare to see. The game creates offensive speed and offensive stats as well. Arguably, Max Airstream didn't have the same sort of cost. Max Airstream was not only as strong as Max Boost, it also raised its base speed every single time it was executed. While Max Airstream was being considered strong in the game, it brought its White Power, Gigantox, and Solar Power, meaning it could easily wipe Pokemon on the field with its dealing Gigantamax Charizard is harder on Groudon speed boost. Fake Out, which stops the target from moving for a single turn and acts with heightened priority. Rillaboom's speed stat also works in its favor because it gets the move U-turn, which does some damage and then lets the user switch out. Only Pokemon generally prefer to use this move after the opponent has already attacked the turn, because it allows them to create a real offensive Pokemon that excels in performance, damage, and won the Charlotte Regional Championships this year with the same set. Rillaboom has only been legal for 2 World Championships, and its finishes are first and second. It's won countless regional and international level events, and it's showing no signs of slowing down. In fact, as I record this in early August, Rillaboom is arguably the strongest it's ever been, despite the fact that it now has to deal with powerful, restricted, legendary Pokemon. Unlike Charizard and Venusaur, who perform best when the entire team is built around supporting and enabling them, Rillaboom is a lot more selfless. Rather than work as a star, it instead enables its teammates to shine, making it much more flexible than teams it can work on. Despite the nerfs to Gravity Glide and the introduction of multiple new ways to stop fakeouts,
Wow, I'm still one-shotting with a +0 NPC. Wow. It's not like you need a plus weapon for this.
and that's the last starter Pokemon I'm going to talk about. Hello. Glad we talked about them all. Okay, let's end the video before it. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you might like this other video I made trying to find the worst starter Pokemon of all time. It seems like some of the Pokemon I was considering really surprised me, so just be warned if you're going to watch it. Ice is one of the absolute worst types in the entire franchise. Have you ever wondered what the
Yellow.
ice type Pokemon is? I did, so I started working on this video, and so I found that there are not that many good ice type Pokemon. I've done quite a few videos in this series, but I think this one was the most challenging in terms of finding enough Pokemon to put on the list. But after a lot of review and overhaul, digging through the tournaments, I think I finally have a list that I feel comfortable sharing with you. So let's start with number 10, Lapras. Lapras is a water and ice type Pokemon that most of you probably know. I mean, it's super iconic. Please keep in mind that this is not a list of how much I like these Pokemon, it's strictly how good were they in the official competitive format. Lapras was, at one point, kind of okay. Actually, at 2 points, kind of okay. Back during the first year of XY, Lapras actually got top A's at the World Championships. Lapras was not a very popular Pokemon at the time, but there was a reason to use it. You see, Lapras gets access to the Ice type move with Freeze Dry, and Freeze Dry is really, really good. Freeze Dry is an Ice type move that, instead of being resisted by Water type Pokemon, instead does super effective damage against them. This is a big deal for a Pokemon like Lapras because back in 2014, Water type Pokemon were very common. In fact, the combination of Polycule and Piccolo was on a lot of teams that year, forming this kind of great duo. Lapras is not only immune to Water type moves because of its ability Water Form, it also heals from them if it gets hit by one, and it can threaten Water type Pokemon back with Freeze Dry, which can even KO Ludicolo in a single hit. When this Lapras wasn't facing off against a Water type Pokemon, it can still be kind of scary because this Lapras used the move Sheer, which is a one-hit KO move that only works 30% of the time. If my memory is correct about this specific Lapras, it hit quite a few Sheer holds and ultimately ended up making it all the way to the final 8 players of the World Championship. If this were everything the Lapras had done, I probably wouldn't have put it on this list, but Lapras actually was really good during the beginning of Sword and Shield. You see, Lapras is one of the few Pokemon that was given a unique Gigantamax form. Dynamax is the central mechanic of Sword and Shield, and the way that it worked is that it would double your Pokemon's HP stats and change all of their regular moves into special max moves, which were mostly stronger and had a special secondary attack. Gigantamax Pokemon were given a special, unique G-Max move that only their normal Dynamax. In Lapras' case, giving you
Why his eyes are full? There's not even a boost. Oh my god, I go Komara first. I need to do that anywho.
Which is a really hard activation condition because there just aren't that many Pokemon that can set up the Snow or the Hail. Hail was changed to Snow at Scarlet Violet, so Hail's pre-Scarlet Violet, Snow Scarlet Violet. Anyway, Lapras was really good because it didn't need the Hail to be set up, so it actually set up the Aurora Veil. So you could do stuff like use Lapras to set up the Aurora Veil and have your keep around it, or you could give Lapras the weakness policy, attacking with one of your own Pokemon.
Wow, this sure sounds like Graveyard of the Dead. Please, Mara, be here. Why can't these mobs be here? Following someone, killing Moro. So I have like a few minutes before it spawns. Kill stealing.
Maybe it's in the blasting ram forest. Fiddlehead Fern.
What does a star do?
No, I'm in the Twilight.
Yes, I get that.
But yeah. I'm gonna find these berries.
And it's had enough success over the years that I think that it deserves to be on this list. Okay, number 7 is our first hit. All that I would say is it's also a new addition. I think that if it's been around for longer, I can see it higher up, but it's only been out for a little bit over a year.
Chen Pao? Back to
The
Caliber.
seventh slot is Excalibur. Excalibur is an ice and dragon type Pokemon that is Scarlet Violet pseudo-legendary Pokemon. Excalibur won the very first regional Scarlet Violet disease battle. It also won the first national tournament as well. It also followed it up by getting second place at the following international championship. Excalibur is one of the strongest Pokemon to come out of Scarlet Violet for a number of reasons. I think the most obvious one is that it has really good stats. Its core stats are like, I would say, middle. Like, they're not even that bad. And it hits really hard and it's very bulky as well. It also has great ability that not only prevents you from being hurt, but also gets an attack boost if it's ever hit with a fire type move. And it gets a unique signature move, which is really good. Wave Rush does a ton of damage with every distance, and the reason that it's allowed to be this strong is because it has a pretty big drawback. Until the next time that Excalibur moves, it will take double damage. The thing is, though, that it's actually easy to get Excalibur to move again, because even using a move like Protect, which moves with most other moves and shields Excalibur full damage, that cancels out the effect. So you can just Wave Rush into Protect, and it's like nothing ever happened. You can also use a priority move like Ice Shard, which not only does full damage, but also moves before most other moves.
Wait, I've come here to the blasting ram, but I have no.
Many ice type Pokemon in Scarlet Violet.
Oh my god, you've put one on it already.
What? I haven't done anything to Busting Ram.
Oh, this one just automatically has a green one. Let me put on these wool from the wolves.
don't get that many resistances, and you struggle offensively. Opponents know having a quadruple weakness to fire as well as being weak to many other common types is just not a very good look. It also is kind of tough because neither ice or grass is steel or fire type Pokemon, which is just rough. The thing is though, opponents actually won 3 different national championships back in 2010. You see, back then, Groudon and Kyogre were some of the top Pokemon in the game, and the opponents who actually matched up really well against them. You could turn off their weather with their own weather, and if you were slower than them, you could actually lead both with snow and immediately gain some local weather over Groudon and Kyogre. It was just a little either way attacking moves through Groudon using ground type moves and Kyogre using water type moves, and it could hit the both with super effective damage with its grass type moves, and it could also use Blizzard against Groudon as well. The bonus was actually used a little bit in 2013 as well. Being able to hit Landorus and Thundurus for super effective damage was a really big deal, and so opponents who actually got second in 2 different national championships in 2013 and placed top 4 in the world championships that year. The thing is though, that was over a decade ago, and since then, like, although opponents were sealed to the use, it's never really been common or good in my opinion. Opponents are really unfortunate speed stat where like you kind of want it to be a trick room, but it's also not strong enough to really justify it as like a main trick room attacker, and it's also not so fast that you can even get to the situation where it have it be all that fast. So it kind of just has a tough time across the board. Opponents definitely had some major issues, but it did see a little play earlier this year when Tail was changed to snow. This is basically just a 50% increase to its defensive stat, plus with the rationalization of both snow to change its type, so not have its terrible defensive typing. That makes sense. It will see a ton of success with the players in the fair market. I think those popular champions struggle a bit. So I think that there's hope for Bulbasaur in the future if the conditions are just right. Our number 5 slot goes to a Pokemon that has not been out anywhere near as long as Bulbasaur. It's one of the future paradigm Pokemon, Iron Bundle. Like Lapras, Iron Bundle is placed in water type Pokemon, but unlike Lapras, Iron Bundle is extremely fast. In fact, it's the fastest Pokemon to be added in Scarlet and Violet, and it can even go even faster if you give it the booster energy item, which raises its speed by 50%. Iron Bundle had a phenomenal first year. Despite only being legal for about a year, Iron Bundle had a phenomenal performance. The thing about Iron Bundle that makes it so good is that it is a really good Pokemon at controlling the speed of the battle, while still being able to exert offensive pressure. As an ice type, Iron Bundle can use hit advantage. Its overall slows the speed by 1, unlocking combos with other Pokemon. Basically, it's very valuable in speed control mode because although it's not very strong, being able to do a little bit of chip damage can play a pretty big role, especially when you consider Pokemon holding items like a Focus Sash or an enemy able to be Fury, which prevents them from getting knocked out in a single hit. So with the booster energy item, Iron Bundle so fast it can use out speed for other Pokemon in Tail. Iron Bundle won 5 different regional level events this season and placed top 4 or better in pretty much every event in the league. That makes it really added to a really more powerful Pokemon back in the game. And it was really neat about Iron Bundle is that along the line you get an offensive Pokemon and a support Pokemon pretty well. You see, just like Lapras, Iron Bundle also gets to move Freeze Dry, and Freeze Dry has really nice synergy with Tiger Pump. You could both Freeze Dry and Tiger Pump are any water type moves, there's no single type in the game that can consistently well, because the other types that are water, grass, and dragon, all of which Freeze Dry does super effective damage against. Tiger Pump isn't an accurate move, and so when I use Iron Bundle, I didn't like using Tiger Pump. Instead, I use it as well as the more supporting capabilities rather than just offensive. So Iron Bundle has actually continued its dominant streak once more powerful Pokemon were added into the game. I think I would have put it higher, despite the fact that it's not doing so well anymore. I still think it had such an incredible first season that it deserves to be this high up on the list. Okay, we're into the top 4 now. Our number 4 slot goes to a Pokemon that up until last World Championships was the only ice type to ever win the World Championships. And that's Mamoswine. I feel like Mamoswine is another classic ice type Pokemon. Mamoswine actually is really interesting typing because it's also a ground type Pokemon. Ice and ground have really nice offensive synergy, which means Mamoswine is really threatening against a ton of different Pokemon. Normally you could use a grass or a flying type to deal with a ground type, but those are both weak to ice. And ice type Pokemon don't like dealing with fire or steel types, both of which are weak to ground. Mamoswine won the World Championship back in 2013 with Choice Star Wins because it was one of the few Pokemon that matched up well against both Landorus Therian and Thundurus Carnage, who were kind of running the show back then. It was definitely more of a niche pick, like it wasn't a Pokemon on pretty much anybody's radars, but it ended up winning the entire tournament because it was so well positioned. It also saw a little bit of play the following year when the power level was lowered to Pokemon around. And there's actually a really funny Mamoswine that managed to win a regional championship back in, I believe, 2012.
Wow, Western Coin. Very useful.
And it wasn't, so yeah, one the whole tournament, which is pretty funny. As a ground and ice type Pokemon, Mamoswine really excels offensively, though it has a decent bulk, so it's not like it will go down to a single hit unless it's a powerful, super effective one. Mamoswine will typically hold a Choice Scarf for boost of speed or a Focus Sash for increased survivability, though we have seen a little bit of play with Therian said, Mammoth did receive a pretty major buff in maybe Sword and Shield, or maybe it was Scarlet and Violet, where they changed the way one of his abilities worked, where now the Oblivious ability, which previously was pretty worthless, it now also blocks Intimidate, which is a pretty big deal, because Intimidate is very, very good. It didn't cause Mammoth to have a major resurgence or anything, but I do think that in the future, Mammoth could potentially pop up here or there, now that it has a better ability. It's worth noting that Mammoth also has the ability Thick Fat, which is good. It reduces damage from fire and ice type moves, but Thick Fat wasn't enough to take Mammoth over the list of being a really strong Pokemon. Normally at this point in the video, I would do honorable mentions, but I'm not going to do honorable mentions in this video because the regular Pokemon that were on this list are like really not even worth mentioning. Okay, fine. I'll honorable mention on it because it was one of the tournament earlier this year. I actually made a video on it. People are showing it to be like one of the worst legendary Pokemon of all time, and then it came out of nowhere in a tournament earlier this season. It's really interesting story and kind of shows the success of both Terastallization and the change from Hail to Snow. So if you're interested, you should check out that video. I'm not going to talk about any other ice types though because they're really bad. Green Flash is not really bad. In fact, I'd say it's the first Pokemon on this list that I feel confident saying is good. It's a Alolan Ninetales. It's an ice and fairy type Pokemon that also has the ability of snowboarding, setting up the hail or the snow. Alolan Ninetales' stats aren't great on paper. It is fast, but it doesn't hit you hard. It also is not that nasty, or beyond that whole piece. The Alolan Ninetales is really Aurora Veil. Take big damage. And that's a big part of the reason why in 2017, when Alolan Ninetales was first released in Sun and Moon, it did really well. Alolan Ninetales won an international championship and placed second in the world championship in 2017. Alolan Ninetales was one of the top Pokemon throughout that first year. Back in 2017, because it was just so hard to deal with Aurora Veil when the power level was low. 8 turns to reduce damage for your entire team is just really, really strong. So it's no surprise that Alolan Ninetales kind of saw. It has struggled a bit since then with more powerful going back to play, especially with weather setters. Keep in mind, you do have to add the snow/hail weather features up in order to have Aurora Veil work. So if your opponent has a weather setter, they can actually just keep it as a match, which is not relevant to the construct. Aurora Veil is the most Aurora Veil. That being said, Alolan Ninetales did win a regional earlier this year, like I mentioned, on territory Cornell instead of this Blizzard spammer. I mentioned
Don't you love that the music restarts every time they pick up or like turn in? Isn't that great?
You guys?
Have you not been listening?
I never listen to anything.
Sacrificing all your Pokemon just to get up. Like all ice type Pokemon, Alolan Ninetales has a lot of property changes to Scarlet and Violet, especially the change in Snow makes it make your typing actually work pretty well with Aurora Veil, maybe with Intimidate and with the Snow Up, boosting its physical defense stat. Terastallization is also nice because it doesn't have very good defense typing, so you can do a lot of commentating and have a good quadruple weakness and steal. It's a Pokemon I'm sure we'll be seeing more of in the future because of how strong the combination of Snow and Aurora Veil is, and although it's not like super good at the moment, I think that it's Pokemon that you kind of always have to be wary of because it can always pop up. All that's left is the top 2. I went back and forth a little bit on these, but in the end decided that the Pokemon with the better results should hold the number 1 slot. Before we talk about that though, let's talk about what is inarguably the strongest ice type Pokemon, Calyrex Ice. If you don't already know, Calyrex Ice is kind of weird because it's kind of a fusion Pokemon. I mean, it is a fusion Pokemon between the Calyrex and then the Pokemon Glastrier, which I don't know why sticking a little guy on a horse makes it a brand new Pokemon, but I guess that's how it works now. Calyrex Ice is incredibly threatening. It's an ice and psychic type, which is amazing typing. In fact, I'd say it's actually pretty bad. Neither of those types are considered very good. But the typing isn't the reason to use Calyrex Ice. Calyrex has some of the most broken stats out of any Pokemon I've ever seen. It has remarkable attack, insane defense, and it's really slow. But being slow actually helps it because it actually wants to be used inside of Trick Room, which causes slow Pokemon to move before fast ones. Calyrex as a psychic type gets access to the move Trick Room, although Trick Room isn't its most threatening move. That would be Glacial Oh yeah, it's worth noting that because Calyrex is a restricted Pokemon, it can only be used when other restricted Pokemon are legal. And prior to the current format, the only time it was legal was during Sword and Shield when it was first released. And it was good, but I would say like not an S tier restricted Pokemon. Like it was really good, but it wasn't like the best. It was mostly used with Palkia as like a trick room duo, where both Palkia and Calyrex could work in trick room. They could both set trick room up, and then it was just kind of the team that aimed to overall be a trick room. And it was really solid. It got top 4 at the World Championships, but it wasn't like crazy dominant or anything. Recently, though, Calyrex is looking a lot better in the current format. At the time I'm recording this, it most recently got first place at the North American International Championships, which is the only international versus legal floor, and it's looking like maybe the top restricted Pokemon going into the World Championships. That's partially because it got a pretty big buff. They added an item called the Clear Amulet, which prevents the holder stats from being lowered, which basically takes Calyrex from losing to its power to beating it. Calyrex also, like all ice type goods, has tons of grass sensation because its defensive typing isn't that good, but fire, or water, or grass type is a pretty big deal because it not only gives you better defensive relationships, it also makes you, at least for fire or grass, immune to a really threatening status condition like burn or sleep. It's not technically immune to sleep, but it's immune to spore, which is the main form of sleep, and you get throwing. And I think that if it wins the World Championships this year, I would feel comfortable putting it in the #1 slot. Calyrex is really incredible, and if you feel like it should be the #1 Pokemon on this list, that's totally valid. For me, though, that slot goes to a different ice type Pokemon. The Pokemon that put Weavile out of business, Chen Pao. Chen Pao is basically souped up Weavile on Omega steroids. It has the same typing, Ice and Dark, but pretty much everything else about it is better. Chen Pao is faster, stronger, and overall just better than Weavile. It's a better ability, a better move pool. It's just like incredible. I'm not saying this to rag on Weavile, but keep in mind Weavile was already on this list. Like it wasn't even at the very, very bottom, right? And so having a Pokemon that is just better in every way is pretty impressive. So what makes Chen Pao so good? Well, a big part of it is its ability. Sword of Ruin is completely unlike any other ability we've seen prior to Scarlet and Violet. It reduces the defense stat of all other Pokemon in the field except for Chen Pao. This might not sound that flashy, but keep in mind there's never been an ability that did this before. The only abilities that can even increase your partner's damage output were like Charger Bugs and Stonejourners, both very gimmicky Pokemon. To have a legendary Pokemon with an ability that just passively amplifies your partner's damage if you're using physical moves is a really big deal. And that's part of the reason it basically unlocked a whole new type of strategy. Using Pokemon like Paranormal Choice Band and Dragonite with Mission Takeout and Passivity, you could use the powerful priority move Extreme Speed with Boost Button, Choice Band, and Paranormal and Sword of Ruin to basically just run over opposing teams. And you don't even have to use Chen Pao as part of a combo. You could just use it on its own as well because all of its moves are physical. That's a big part of the reason why Chen Pao won at least 5 regionals, its international level championship, and the World Championships, being only the second Ice type Pokemon ever to win. And because Chen Pao's ability is just basically the flat damage multiplier, it pairs really well with even stronger Pokemon. When Urshifu was added in, we saw Choice Scarf Urshifu plus Chen Pao be a really dangerous combo because Urshifu was hard enough to deal with on its own. When you're multiplying its damage even further, that's terrifying. Especially because you also need to deal with Chen Pao. Like, you can't just ignore it and focus on the Urshifu because it's really strong on its own too. More recently, we saw Chen Pao paired with Zamazenta, where it can not only boost the damage of Body Press, bringing it up to just stupid amounts of damage, but Chen Pao could also threaten the ghost types that are immune to Body Press. I think part of what's so interesting about Chen Pao is that it's actually a very inflexible Pokemon. What I mean by that is that it pretty much always runs the same moves and items. It's always Protect, Sucker Punch, Sacred Sword, either Icicle Crash or Ice Spinner, and pretty much always Ultimate Focus Dash. While we have seen some experimentation, it normally goes and sometimes Stellar. But despite the fact that it's so standardized, Chen Pao is just so strong that it doesn't even really seem to care about it. Dark and Ice are both really good offensive types. The fact that Chen Pao gets Sacred Sword coverage against opposing Dark or Steel types is a really big deal. With the Focus Dash, you can't get rid of it in a single hit, and with its high-base speed, it's almost always contributing to battle. It's a clear standout as the best Treasure of Ruin, which is saying something because the other two are really good. Not you, Chen. Chen Pao feels like they finally designed a good offensive ice type, and the only complaint I have about it is that it might be a little bit too good. Anyway, that's what I think the 10 best ice type Pokemon are. If you like this video, you should check out one of the other ones from the series. I personally think that the Fairy type one is really interesting because it's a type that hasn't been around for very long, and so it's really interesting just to see kind of how only modern competitive Pokemon really can be introduced to the Fairy type. So it's fun for me to make. If you want to cleanse your palate from a bad type with the best one in the game, you should check it out. The year is 2016. For the first time in history, the best competitive Pokemon players in the world are just about ready to give up. This season, something happened that was thought to be impossible. Something that has never happened before and has been since. Somehow, despite there being over 700 Pokemon in the game, there is one clear best team, and its name is Big Six. It's not so unusual for there to be a best team in the game. In fact, at most points during a competitive Pokemon season, there tends to be a frontrunner in the teams to beat race. But don't let that fool you, because Big Six was anything but usual. It appeared at the very beginning of the format, dominating the first American and European regionals, and continued to win nearly every event for the rest of the season. Whenever it looked like players had finally found a counter, Big Six adapted, changing the rotating six slot in the team and emerging once again as the #1 team to beat. This longevity and this mutating adaptability set Big Six apart from any other team in history, because while there have been other times where one team seemed more dominant, players had never before failed to find an answer. Big Six is the only exception in history, and before the season had officially ended, we already knew the truth. Big Six was, and still is, the strongest Pokemon team in history. We spent the entire season aware of Big Six's power, but any hope that it might be defeated was extinguished at US Nationals. This was the final tournament before the World Championships, and Big Six not only placed both first and second, it also had 3 other variants placing in the top 8. US Nationals, which is now called North American Internationals, is a really important tournament. As the final major event for the World Championships, it's a pivotal tournament for players who want to qualify, and so it sets the groundwork for the World Championships by laying out clearly what the best teams are, with top players holding nothing back. To have one team perform so much better than the rest of the field after an entire season being beaten down by this very team was the worst sign for competitive players. It seemed like the world's winning team had already been decided. The only question was which Big Six player would be the one using it. But despite all the signs pointing towards Big Six being the best team of all time, not everybody was ready to throw in the towel. In fact, our story today centers around one particularly stubborn player with a bad habit of ignoring the strongest Pokemon in the game, or some less conventional players. See, I also attended US Nationals in 2016, and I was ready to win it all with a team to make sure to beat down the most rusty and outstanding players. With a red-hot team ready to go for very resistance, I continued to by Courteous and most smooth out, using all the stat boosts to use and with my double intimidating core of Salamence and Scrafty, I can cut Primal Groudon's attack power dramatically. With my Dialga's Trick Room, I can flip the speed against faster Groudon, Xerneas, and Mega Salamence, then hit the Fairy Deer and Jet Plane for super effective damage. And with my own fast, special attacking Primal Groudon, I can outspeed and KO opposing Primal Groudon. Last but not least, my Lumberry, Safeguard, Turbo Fast Cresselia could protect my team from the menace that was Dark Void Smeargle. With my team full of tricks and traps to take down Big Six, I reached #1 on both the in-game ladder and the Showdown ladder in the lead-up to US Nationals, where I finished with a resounding 5 wins and 4 losses and a Day 1 exit. At the time, it was my worst performance at this tournament ever, and truthfully, I was ready to throw in the towel, not just on the format, but on competitive Pokemon altogether. With my poor performance at Nationals, I lost my Day 2 invitation to the World Championships, an absolutely absurd advantage that no longer exists, which would allow the top performers of the season to skip an entire day of competition. This was my season featuring 2 regional wins and a regional top 4 was out of the race. And if topping 2 of the ladders wasn't enough to guarantee me a good finish, what was even the point in working so hard? I had spent so much time preparing for US Nationals, only to have it all blow up in my face, and having to sit in the sidelines with my creative team, watching 2 Big Six teams play in the finals, was demoralizing in ways I have trouble explaining. Add insult to injury, they wouldn't even let me into my apartment once I got back home. But after some time decompressing and talking Groudon are Xerneas and Groudon. But what if you only wanted to use one restricted? If you wanted to beat Big Six, and you didn't want to use both Primal Groudon and Xerneas for yourself, there was one answer.
Wow, I'm still one-shotting. Wow. Though it needs a crit. Still, +0 NPC.
Just a random NPC, right?
No, it's literally a white.
Oh, that's
I just need crits.
PR?
That's what I do nowadays. Crits are better than the measle 2 damage STR gives.
Snowy forest? No wonder I haven't seen it before.
Oh, you need to beat the Yeti.
No wonder! I've been like spectating flying through these forests and fields only for me to find out it's in snow! What do I need to defeat this?
I think you're there. You just beat the Rickast. You just check advancements, by the way.
I did that! Wheel. Hydra drop.
There should be some in the...
When your hunger bar is depleted.
Oh, just mine a bunch of stuff.
Slay the carbonite gaslings around the gas trap. And activate to wrench.
I think it means the trap.
And sometimes change their typing and or ability. On the whole, they aren't quite as strong as a restricted Pokemon, but they're a lot.
Line your garments with the soft fur from the Yeti, Alpha Yeti, keeping you safe from the glacier cold.
Thanks to the control provided by Mega Gengar.
Looking through all the fields for this fucking berry. Oh, Polly, this is
One of the biggest questions we had to answer was, how on earth are we gonna stop the Xerneas? I made an entire video breaking down Big Six, the individual Pokemon, why it's so unstoppable, how we adapted and overcame all counterplay during the course of the season. I do recommend that you watch it before you finish this video so you can fully understand just why this team was so unbeatable. But speed, it wasn't enough to allow Gengar to consistently beat Xerneas. While it did work sometimes, the issue was in the supporting cast. Yes, if you were somehow at the end of the game in a 1-against-1, most Pokemon on Point B, there were no staff boosts or speed control effects, whatever in play, Gengar would win. But what about when Xerneas was paired with Mega Kangaskhan that could trigger Gengar with Sucker Punch? What about when the Spearow used Follow Me instead of Takeout and saved Xerneas with Sludge Bomb? What if Mega Salamence picked up a KO with Double Edge? Many players have tried Mega Gengar, and while it did work sometimes, it just wasn't consistent enough. Xerneas had too many tools at its disposal, which is why it was so crucial that Mega Gengar had the correct support moves. You see, Gengar has a problem. It has a ridiculous one of the best Pokemon ever made, is what I would say if I was lying. In fact, outside of the final part of 2016, it has rarely seen any usage. And so, you might be surprised to learn that it was a crucial part of beating the strongest team ever made. In order to beat the strongest Pokemon, surely you have to use the strongest Pokemon yourself, right? It's a line of thinking that makes sense, but it is missing a crucial qualifier. In order to beat the strongest Pokemon, you have to use the strongest Pokemon against, specifically, those Pokemon. That's where Bronzong shines. Bronzong is an incredibly slow and tanky Pokemon, seemingly designed to shut down the Big Six. The most important part of its arsenal is its typing, as a Steel and Psychic type can resist Xerneas' very type moves. And it is so immensely bulky that if you train it heavily in its HP and special defense, it can even survive 2 Xerneas Moonblasts after a Geomancy. In 2016, there were very, very few Pokemon that could say this, and most of them were not very good, but surviving hits alone just isn't enough. Bronzong had to actually be able to do something after. Fortunately, it can, because as a Psychic type, Bronzong gets access to Trick Room, flipping the order in which Pokemon move. Part of what makes Xerneas so threatening is the fact that Geomancy doubles its speed, allowing it to outspeed every Pokemon without a speed boost of their own. But Trick Room turns that speed boost into a negative, forcing Xerneas to be the last to move rather than the first. But taking a hit and then setting up Trick Room isn't enough for Pokemon to beat Xerneas, because remember, Xerneas also doubles its special move. If it can survive a hit inside a Trick Room, it can still do so much damage that its partners can clean up when, or if, it does eventually go down. So far, both Pokemon we're using to beat Big Six are special attackers, and unfortunately, Bronzong is an ultimate block without a break the attack stat. To make matters worse, Xerneas using all of the stat points have to go with Bronzong's special defense and AP stats, and Xerneas would become the ultimate villain in the world, making it even harder. Is there any way for Bronzong to actually damage Xerneas? Actually, yeah, it is by turning Geomancy against Xerneas once more. You see, not much attacking stat is the only thing to consider when factoring in how much damage your Pokemon's gonna do. You also have to consider how strong the move is that you're using. As an example, this is probably the reason why Game Freak gave the new Pokemon Kikaton such a low attacking stat. Because its signature move, Kikaton Hammer, is just so strong, he realized that if it had a good attack stat, it would probably do too much damage. And okay, I mean, Kikaton came out in Generation 9 and Bronzong with Gen 4 Pokemon, so you might not see, like, how this is relevant. Because if you sort Bronzong's strongest skill type moves from strongest to weakest in Generation 6, the top move that shows up will be Iron Head, an 80 base power move. But there is another move that we can use. This move gets stronger the faster the target is compared to the user. Gyro Ball. Gyro Ball is a move with variable base power. In theory, it can be as weak as 1 base power, the single weakest a move can possibly be. But for Bronzong, that is never the case, because it becomes stronger and stronger the faster the target is compared to the user. And at maximum power, Gyro Ball reaches a whopping 150 base power, a Hyper Beam that doesn't miss and doesn't need a recharge turn. Now, you need to be a lot slower than your target if you want to reach this 150 base power. So much so that the slowest Bronzong doesn't even reach it against the fastest Xerneas. But here's the catch. When Xerneas doubles its special attack and special defense with Geomancy, it is also forced to double its speed. That maxes out the power of Gyro Ball. Gyro Ball is unlikely to KO Xerneas in a single hit, even after Geomancy. But it should always do at least 70%, and often it would be closer to 80%. Enough that a SpongeBob you just switching Groudon or lead with the slower Groudon, and you're immediately forced to scramble. But Bronzong wants to be able to switch in with full HP only after your opponent commits to setting up Xerneas. Starting with an early Victory itself, and also using turning between Pokemon that can't touch Groudon. Beyond that, Gengar and Bronzong lead to scramble uses to kick his Groudon and Spearow Groudon in a major way. It won't work. Hitmontop was not a popular Pokemon at the time. In fact, there was only one single Hitmontop in top cut of US Nationals, placing 18th. And so you might think that Hitmontop just can't keep up, especially against Pokemon like Xerneas and Mega Salamence. But again, beating Big Six isn't about using the strongest Pokemon. It's about using the strongest Pokemon for the job. And just like Bronzong, Hitmontop proves to be a specialist. The first piece of the puzzle is Hitmontop's ability, Intimidate. The weakens the physical attack stat of most opponent's Pokemon every time Hitmontop switches in. Gengar, Bronzong, and Kyogre are all bulkier on the special side. Intimidate helps compensate. Intimidate also changes important damage levels, allowing Gengar to survive Salamence Double Edge and giving Kyogre good odds to survive 2 Kangaskhan levels. Intimidate also has excellent synergy with Shadow Tag, as the best way to remove stat drops is to switch out, which Gengar prevents. But there's lots of Intimidate Pokemon, so why choose Hitmontop specifically? The answer is the specific moves that Hitmontop learns. Probably the most important is Fake Out. Hitmontop is intended to be led alongside Gengar. For the turn where Gengar is the most vulnerable is the first turn before its Mega Evolution is online. Gengar can turn the battle into a 2-against-1 by taunting Spearow or burning Kangaskhan, but on the turn where it does this, it's vulnerable to an attack from the partner. So, in keeping with the trend of disabling Pokemon, Hitmontop makes it a 1-against-1 for that one turn only, creating its own turn to disable a crucial threat with Fake Out, protecting Gengar while it Mega evolves. As it turns out, sometimes one turn is all it needs. Fake Out also means Spearow will stop a keeper from moving at any point in the battle. It's an extremely versatile move that is reckless and have. There's even more serious questions in the game, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Hitmontop does need some way to do this, and its strongest option is combat. It's probably the least used from Hitmontop, but it is important. You lose the entire team that can hit combat or super damage, and only it's actually very difficult to get rid of it before Hitmontop has moved. Second, Intimidate activates whenever Hitmontop searches in. Fake Out is only usable for a first turn after Hitmontop is released. Intimidate and Fake Out get more powerful the more times you can switch your Pokemon in during a battle. And if you want to switch in, you first have to switch Pokemon. Third, the check button allows Hitmontop to be a health pack for the more important Pokemon like Restricted, Kyogre's Danger, and Hitmontop activates to get this safely again. Sums up that Kyogre are in the field and switch Kyogre to Hitmontop. Kyogre's been played to come right back in, winning the White Pearl and Intimidate character. The check button works especially well against Type 6. Hitmontop starts the battle with the lead, but Intimidate and Fake Out can go right away. But if it's Type switch, you can bring Bronzong, Xerneas, Salamence, and Kyogre if you already have your Groudon on the field. You get the added benefit of saving Hitmontop for later, for a sacrifice or for another round of Fake Out and Intimidate. Like I said, a core theme of this team was control, especially against Big 6. This team offered so much control, in fact, that Marcus and I built a complex, branching flowchart using these four Pokemon. A flowchart that could be every single Big 6 variant, this is the only time in my career where I felt like the battle was decided in team preview, where I didn't even think about the moves, I already knew what move I'd make no matter what the opponent did. World Championships could give us a 4 Big 6 teams, and I named all of them without dropping a game. One of these sets was recorded against Big C, the variant was legendary. I'll show it to you here so you can get a nice everything worked great when things didn't go perfectly. Hitmontop and Gengar stare down Salamence and Talonflame. The lead that I have is talked about yet. And the turn one looks like it goes poorly. My opponent reveals Quick Guard, blocking my Hitmontop to Fake Out. And while Gengar damages Talonflame, Hyper Voice deals a ton to both my Pokemon. But I trained Hitmontop to survive this very move, and a check button activates, allowing me to bring in Bronzong. On the next turn, Flare Blitz deals a ton of damage to Bronzong, but knocks Talonflame out with the recoil. Without Gengar damage Salamence Sludge Bomb, Hyper Voice KOs Gengar and leaves Bronzong with low HP. However, now the game is functionally over, as Bronzong sets up Trick Room. Kyogre goes out, and despite both Bronzong and Hitmontop being low HP, the combination of Skill Swap and Water Spout is just too devastating for my opponent to handle. Over the next 3 turns, Bronzong will continue to Skill Swap and Kyogre will continue with Water Spout, and the game ends without me taking another point of damage. Game 2 starts with the same lead, with my Gengar and Hitmontop against their Talonflame and Salamence. Once again, the turn 1 doesn't look great. My Hitmontop uses Wide Guard and fails to block anything as their Talonflame's Flare Blitz hits Gengar and burns it. My Will-O-Wisp hits Salamence, which burns it and allows Gengar to survive the incoming Double Edge, but because of the burn, Gengar faints anyway. I send out Bronzong to replace Gengar. They try and KO Bronzong by switching into my Groudon and using Flare Blitz, but I switch Kyogre in and goes the Fire move, which allows I set up Trick Room. Water Spout lands a double KO next turn, and I Skill Swap Tortal C onto Bronzong for there. They go into the variant Groudon, but we still have a check button active. When I switch Hitmontop in to take the Precipice Blades, lowering Groudon's attack and getting Kyogre into much more. They try and all me into Skill Swap, but I switch Hitmontop and Water Spout, and one more Water Spout wins the game. Big 6 was a team known for its flexibility, for its ability to adapt and overcome no matter the situation, by using Pokemon, moves, and abilities that limited its vast number of options to a much more reasonable amount. This team was able to use some of the limited weaknesses that Big 6 had, specifically to a well-supported Primal Kyogre inside of Trick Room. With the hours spent staring at the team builder, with all the theory and practice spent on beating Big 6, the complex, branching flowchart designed to cover every move, every option, every booty boost, we had done something thought to be possible. We have a safe, consistent, winning matchup against the strongest team in history, but that wasn't enough to win Worlds, because this team still has 2 open slots, and there are a benchboard team we still have to beat. And so, it is finally time to add our second restricted Pokemon. You may be surprised to hear that in 2016, Rayquaza was pretty solidly the 4th best restricted Pokemon behind Groudon, Kyogre, and Xerneas. This is surprising, because Mega Rayquaza has the most total stat points out of any Pokemon ever made, an ability that cannot have been designed with the target rather than just clicking the easy button. But despite his lack of spread damage, Mega Rayquaza is the only choice for this team. Remember, it's not needed to be Groudon and Xerneas, but it does have to be everything else. And right now, there is a whale of a problem Pokemon that needs to be addressed. Primal Kyogre. While my own Primal Groudon could in theory work against Primal Kyogre as well, I've never liked teams with Pokemon that get in the way of each other. And if my opponent has tricks that can reclaim the weather, we've already seen how fast Groudon gets wadded out. Rayquaza on paper might seem like a strange choice to use to beat opposing Kyogre. After all, it does have a push weakness to the ice moves that they so often run as coverage, but it is so strong that even without the attack boost or an item that boosts its attack further, his signature move Dragon Ascent is able to do ridiculous damage, dropping opposing Kyogre to low HP. Even if the opponent then gets speed control, Rayquaza's other damaging move is extreme speed. Priority that does more damage than you might expect when used by Mega Rayquaza. Rayquaza has more use than simply smacking Kyogre around though. It has two useful abilities in battle, one before Mega Evolving and one after. Rayquaza starts the battle out with Airlock, an ability that nullifies all weather, but only while the Pokemon is on the field. Importantly, this includes the Primal weather. So if your opponent has Primal Groudon out and has to land against Primal Kyogre, you can switch regular Rayquaza in and go for a KO with water. Airlock changes to Delta Stream, the third and final Primal weather. Delta Stream doesn't give a damage boost to any moves, unlike the other forms of Primal weather, but it does eliminate all weaknesses for Flying-type Pokemon in play. Delta Stream's main use on this team is to eliminate my opponent's weather rather than to extend Rayquaza's life. While the weakness moving effect is absurd, my Rayquaza can rely on it too much because it wasn't supposed to stick around for a long time. Rather than going with an item that can boost its damage, like Voice Band or Life Orb, or an item that can increase its HP like Assault Vest, Marcus and I settled on Focus Sash Rayquaza. Its signature move Dragon Ascent drops its defenses. Focus Sash provides some nice insurance that Rayquaza can stick around for more than one attack. Just like in canon, Rayquaza's here to handle both Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre's speeds. Against Primal Kyogre, Rayquaza can go for an immediate Dragon Ascent and cut the power of water down, or it can try and set up with Sword Sand and then go for a one-shot. With Mega support, opponents can never play passive, or Rayquaza could just set up in their face. Of course, attacking Rayquaza directly risks taking a massive Dragon Ascent. So opponents had to guess right at all times, or risk falling behind in a big way. And while the main Primal Groudon team here was Xerneas, it wasn't the only time the land monster showed up. In fact, one of the main compositions to be going into World was all full Primals. And as you might expect, these teams use both Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre. Mega Rayquaza can threaten Kyogre directly while simultaneously clearing a path for my Kyogre to handle their Groudon. It was the perfect second restricted Pokemon for this team. Mega Rayquaza had especially great synergy with Hitmontop, especially with the Eject button. Eject button opened up plays that would otherwise be impossible, such as this one for a regional tournament following the World Championships, where I brought a team similar to the one that I used at Worlds. The position is my Rayquaza and Kyogre against the opponent's Whimsicott and Kyogre, with my opponent likely having Primal Groudon unrevealed in the back. I preemptively Mega Evolve Rayquaza, who promptly attacks into Kyogre's Protect, while Whimsicott sends Tailwind before Kyogre drops into Focus Sash with Ice Beam. But there was no need to Mega Evolve here, and in doing so, I opened the door for Primal Groudon to come in and nullify my spells, take away my Kyogre's damage output and Rayquaza's damage reduction, which is exactly what happened on my Monster turn. Whimsicott, a brand new Stream Speed, switches to Primal Groudon, allow me to introduce one of the most magical Pokemon I have ever used.
Raichu.
Raichu is a Pokemon that should not be good, and it certainly should not be world champion material. It is lacking offenses and a defense stat lower than Ineon. Its main advantage is speed, but what good is speed without power, without bulk? How could a Pokemon like Raichu ever hope to compete with Primal Kyogre and Mega Rayquaza? The answer is with extreme precision. Raichu is not a good Pokemon generally in this format. Of the over 100 players at Worlds, only 3 of them would use Raichu or using this specific team. And the best placement Raichu had outside of this team was 23rd. But even though Raichu wasn't good generally, it was the perfect last Pokemon on this team. And no other Pokemon could have done what Raichu did. Part of the reason why it has to do with that speed that we were talking about. By outspeeding Mega Kangaskhan, Groudon, Kyogre, and Xerneas, Raichu was able to use certain key moves before some of the biggest threats in the format. Most straightforward is Fake Out. And while this team already has Fake Out with Hitmontop, Fake Out becomes exponentially stronger when there are 2 users on the same team. Double Fake Out has become commonplace nowadays thanks to strong users like Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Iron Hands. Back in the day, it was extremely uncommon to have 2 Fake Out users on the same team because the Fake Out users just weren't that good outside of Kangaskhan. The reason why Double Fake Out is so threatening is because Fake Out pressures your opponents to protect. Because the move is only active on the first turn after a move got into the field, Protect can nullify the advantage Fake Out seems to give you. But with Double Fake Out, Protect becomes extremely risky because if you call it out, you can switch from one Fake Out user into the other. And if you're right and your opponent protects both their Pokemon, you will now have Fake Out active while your opponent just burned their safe resource. Raichu's speed also allowed it to support the team with speed control thanks to its move, Nuzzle. Nuzzle does only a little damage, which might seem inconsequential, but we'll get back to it. But the real reason to use the move is because it paralyzes whenever it hits. Back in Generation 6, Paralysis cut a Pokemon's speed to a quarter rather than the 1/2 that it does now. Paralyzing Xerneas or Rayquaza would often make them a sitting duck, and Kangaskhan and Salamence didn't appreciate the yellow magic either. Nuzzle enabled my Kyogre in a massive way, because remember, the main form of speed control that Kyogre preferred was Trip Room, but in many matchups, Rayquaza was left behind. With Nuzzle, there was now another path for Kyogre to outspeed opponents and launch huge water spouts before they could. Raichu needs an electric type move for damage. We chose one with a huge secondary benefit, Volt Switch. While it's not very strong, it is nice to get a little chip damage on opposing Kyogre. So truthfully, the main reason we chose this move was the secondary effect. After damaging an opponent, Volt Switch allows Raichu to switch out. Now this doesn't sound very exciting, and nowadays most of this effect are common thanks to Parting Shot and U-Turn. But in 2016, Volt Switch had massive implications. Because remember, the best way to stop Kyogre's water type damage was to switch in Groudon. Volt Switch, in a way, allowed you to cheat your switches. The switch from Volt Switch doesn't occur until the move hits, while hard switches take place at the top of the turn. If both Kyogre and Groudon switched in on the same turn, whoever got the weather would be whoever switched in second. But with Volt Switch, you always switched in second. More than this, Volt Switch allowed you to choose your switch after you'd already seen what your opponent went for the turn. So if you had Kyogre out in the field next to Raichu, and you thought there was a chance that Groudon could come in, as long as you correctly predicted which Pokemon was not going to switch, you could wait and see whether or not the opponent was switching in Groudon before choosing whether or not to bring in Rayquaza. Preserving Rayquaza's Focus Sash is really important. And without Volt Switch, you might risk it when you didn't have to if you thought your opponent was going to turn off your rain. But with Volt Switch, you were allowed to wait and see. If Groudon came in comes Rayquaza, down goes Groudon. But if Groudon didn't switch in, then Hitmontop can hit the field instead, providing Intimidate and another Fake Out on the following turn. Volt Switch provided option coverage that let us choose the right Pokemon to bring out after we already knew what we were going to do. The last move on Raichu is special, and I don't just mean it was actually an event move that was given out because of Raichu's more famous pre-evolution. See, back in 2015, there was a special Wi-Fi tournament called the Pikachu Cup. It was a for-fun online event where only electric-type Pokemon were allowed. The Pokemon company said that in the tournament, the top 3 used Pokemon, and it would distribute a Pikachu with a special move. Well, thankfully for me, Pikachu's not exactly and Raichu is super frail. So why on earth was this good? I told you earlier that Raichu could only reach its full potential with extreme precision. And in this case, I'm not talking so much about the moves as I am about the stats. Of course, the stats needed some help, and that's where Raichu's item comes in. The Assault Vest prevents Raichu from using any moves that don't do damage, but in exchange, it increases its special ult by a whopping 50%. Remember that inconsequential damage that Nuzzle deals? Not so inconsequential now, because just a little damage means you can still use it while holding the Assault Vest. Fake Out and Nuzzle are extremely weak moves, but they do damage, and therefore Raichu could use them. The Assault Vest helps Raichu on the special side, but it's the physical side where it's weakest, and that's why we trained Raichu extremely heavily in its physical defense stats. In order to do this, we didn't run Raichu at max speed, instead going just above Kangaskhan. While there were a few threats that were faster, we needed every point that we could get. The problem is, even training Raichu heavily in its defense stat still wasn't enough to allow it to survive the big attacks in the format. It was still getting knocked out even by non-super effective hits, which is where Hitmontop comes in. The duo of Raichu and Hitmontop, made stronger by the eject button allowing Hitmontop to come in, actually one of the restricted on the field, provided the last push that Raichu needed. Now it can survive Kangaskhan Double Edge, but only just barely. Except, Raichu barely surviving an attack with low HP turns it from a support Pokemon into a terrifying threat, because suddenly, Endeavor would be online. And the physical attacks were not the only ones that Raichu could take. Even super strong moves like Kyogre Origin Pulse in the Rain and Geomancy boosted Azuria's Dazzling Gleam would not KO Raichu. Even the super effective Primal Groudon Earth Power was not guaranteed to KO. At Worlds, my Raichu survived the Life Orb boosted Mega Rayquaza Draco Meteor, and my opponent was banking on it getting the KO. When it didn't, I basically won the spot. With every stat point meticulously chosen, Raichu ascended past what anyone thought was possible. It became a defensive backbone that tied the entire team together in one neat package. Raichu did have one last benefit. His ability, Lightning Rod. Primal Kyogre only has two weaknesses, to Grass and Electric. And Raichu's Lightning Rod ability not only makes it immune to electric-type moves, it also redirects them away from its partner. This can be used to save Kyogre from losing Kyogre's Thunders, but it can also be used to stop the ever-annoying Thunders from paralyzing my entire team with a wave paralysis on me, but not for the And with all that, you now understand the team that my friends and I used to win the 2016 Pokemon World Championships. In preparation for this event, I memorized a document that I named the official House document, so I could tell from a single move the item on a Talonflame or the relative bulk of Xerneas. I knew every attack my Pokemon could and couldn't take. It's impossible because of how centralized 2016 was as a format. Less viable Pokemon and memorizing everything was actually something that you could do. There were 4 of us who brought this team to the World Championships in 2016. Brendan, who helped refine the team and pushed us to add Origin Pulse to Kyogre, finished in the top 8 in the middle age division despite not having completed the Delta episode and therefore being unable to Mega Evolve his Rayquaza. Villa, who picked up the team shortly before the tournament, made it all the way to the top 8 in the Master division. Marcus, who I eliminated in the semifinals, for a final placement of 3rd. And of course, yours truly, who won the entire thing from day 1. The only player who went from day 1 actually in the final back when the tournament had the ability to skip the first day of the tournament. This team is, in my opinion, a masterpiece. And it very well might be my favorite team that I've ever used. The funny thing is that I've never had a chance to build another team like it, because this team is born in response to the strongest team of all time. Because of another team like Big Six, that also means I've never been able to build another team to stop Big Six, whatever the next Big Six is called. But in a way, that makes this team even more special in my mind. And I think it should serve as a reminder to all of us who give a part of ourselves to this game, strive to be the best in the world, even when it seems impossible, even when a team seems even when you think the best chance is to give up and just accept that the game has been solved. Pokemon, and people who play it, can always evolve further. Now, I do need to address the elephant in the room. What about Worlds itself? You understand the team, yes, but what actually happened on that fateful August weekend over 9 years ago? Isn't there more to this story? I haven't talked about pulling off the single most brutal Big Six shutdown in history, or about having to face off against one of my best friends in the semifinals of the biggest tournament of our lives. I haven't told you about the pressure of being back in World Finals for a second time, knowing that the last time I was here, I choked. And I haven't told you about what happened to me midway through day 2, entering a heightened state that I've never experienced since. But, once again, the size and scope of this video has gotten away from me, which means I'll have to leave you looking forward to the final part of this trilogy. anymore. I am the most decorated player in the history of the game, the only player to have won every single level of competitive Pokemon tournaments, and I'm still winning tournaments almost every year. Tournaments that aren't the World Championships. Despite my long list of accolades, in recent years, I've been struggling with the most important event of the entire circuit. The Pokemon World Championships are the pinnacle of the game. I spent years trying to win after I fell just short in my second year of competing, and then realized my dream when I finally won the whole thing back in 2016 with the help of my friends.
Almost there.
What level you at?
53, 3 hours.
No!
Should be relatively quick now.
Gonna upload it today.
Yeah, I'm spiting that person.
How good my regular season was.
Yep, totally a week, guys. A week or two.
After year, I stumbled.
I'm putting that comment as the thumbnail too.
In some ways, having won before makes falling at the last hurdle feel so much worse.
I don't know if this was the reason, because girl was not big enough, but there was this girl, VTuber, streaming Fiesta, and she was an Isle with 9 viewers.
Dude, I'm pretty sure I gave her a teddy, one of the teddies variants, and like some SE items. And she was like, "Oh my god, thank you," and then she stopped playing.
Like today?
No, not today. It was a few months ago.
Oh. But yeah, she was streaming in Isle today.
Oh, today? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I went to the bathroom and I was like going on Twitch and I just see Fiesta 9 and I'm like, what is this? And I go into it and it's this VTuber girl streaming in Isle. She was, what's the word? She was a crusader.
I see.
This year, I'm betting everything on me.
Maybe I should have streamed this. Who knows?
I always bet everything on me. No. When I won Worlds,
What I do have is a live split as well. That's how I'm keeping track. But I keep hitting the P button, which is pausing it because I made it pause.
That's funny.
So I'm gonna have to like look, see where I hit P throughout, so I can calculate how much time is needed to add.
just as game breaking, where battles are won before they even begin. But turns out that's really hard. And in trying to recapture the magic, it feels like I've been showing up for work with nothing up my sleeve and a team of steady dubs in my hat. So for this season, instead of rule for myself, maybe it's more of a restriction. I'm done trying to crack this game open with tools in the back of the shelf. I'm only going to use the strongest Pokemon this year because I am tired of getting outplayed, which is how I ended up with the team that I brought to the North American International Championship, the final tournament. It's June 10th, the day after NAIC. This is the second biggest event of the season, and I practiced pretty intensely to try and break home the win. I started strong, winning my first 8 games in a row, after which things got a bit tougher and I wasn't able to keep up the streak. In the end, I
In the Dark Tower.
totally respectable. But here's the thing. For the tournament, I got a message from one of my best friends in the entire world, Marcus. He thought that this team was so incredibly overpowered
The block that grows in the Dark Tower.
that I should bring it
In the Dark Tower. Where?
instead save it for Worlds. And Marcus has never told me to save a team
I'm
before.
so confused.
Marcus's opinion holds a lot of weight for me, but after giving it a lot of thought, I made the call to bring the team anyway. While I agreed that the team was good enough to win Worlds, I was convinced that the team was as refined as it needed to be. And what better opportunity to take it for a test ride than the last big event.
Underground.
And good thing I tried it out.
It's underneath the Sky Islands.
I instead had my worst finish of this season. So let's let the good course play and because this has been one of my best years of competitive Pokemon and I played first, and second at the only 3 regional championships I attended and finished 13th at the European International Championships. But even though technically NAIC was my worst finish of the season, I still really believe in this team, which is relevant because although NAIC was the last tournament
You'll never believe this though. I did ISO for level 40, right? I get Western coins. I do Mini Dragon. I get a ring. Like, what is this run?
Could never on a New York normal run.
and it really needs to be up in order to be at maximum threat level. And then there's Calorite's Shadow. You already understand its strength, but it does have an Achilles hook. Its typing and Psychic have terrible synergy together. They overlap on not one, but two weaknesses, resulting in double weaknesses to both Ghost and Dark. And offensively, neither type can hit Dark type Pokemon. Players right now are really only fighting
Yeah.
What the heck is this rod? It's got an Eldarin necklace.
Maybe Spike's doing a lot.
Nah, I think it's new character luck, honestly. Always feels like they give new characters like insane luck and perms like bad luck. Because you've been there.
The longer that character has been like that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. Being entirely reliant on any one Pokemon is inherently really risky. If anything happens to your race car driver, you can sure bet that the pit crew is going to be able to win the game on their own. In a game like Pokemon Operations, damage rolls, and a whole lot of other variants, put all your eggs in the Calorite Strider and
Another bow? What the heck? Give me an next bow.
friend and his genius player, the effervescent Dr. Aaron Trailer. We're driving across California to make it to Aaron Zhang's graduation from business school. Just two cowpokes hitting the open road, nothing but the wind at our backs to guide us, and this cool car that we rented. Terrible visibility, by the way. Could not see anything. If you saw me on the road, I'm sorry. Also, the car was only cool once we figured out how to put the top down. I'm not going to tell you how long that one took. For the next 5 days, we're going to eat good food, see cool places, eat a lot of ice cream, and of course, talk about Pokemon. By the time we're done, I know we'll be one step closer to winning the Pokemon Championship. I did something I've never done before for this video. I hired a composer. The music you should hear every time a new day starts was composed specifically for this video. There's also some other incredible pieces you'll hear later on. Also, all the illustrations you're seeing are custom made by our talented illustrator, but you might not realize the level of detail put into them. In this illustration, there's several sponsors that are actually different in-game companies and sponsors. How much care and attention to detail we put into this. The world video is the one that I care about the most. Each year, my team puts in an unholy amount of work into making it the best it can be. As part of making this video the best it can be, I chose to not take a sponsor, as I didn't want to be beholden to anyone's vision other than my own. If videos like this one matter to you, there's a couple ways you can support us. If you want to see a more behind-the-scenes look into my brain as a competitive player, I have a Patreon where I post 3 additional videos a month. If that's not for you right now, that's okay. Subscribing is a free way to support the channel and all of us. We'll also get videos like this one in your feed. And let's just say, I don't think you're going to want to miss the next tournament video coming out later this year.
Almost there. Almost there. Do I need any more trees? No.
I see. This is where it gets spawned. Fuck off.
You go to the Sky Island yet?
It's planted on 9 days. It's very likely die.
Interesting.
Restricted Pokemon. That way, as worlds get closer, if any of us realize that our concept is working, we can use the learning from everybody else. Growth and change direction much faster. And there's one more
What time is it?
advantage.
8:48.
Alright, yeah, I'll be done.
But the right team for me might be different than the right team for Aaron or Marcus or Yuki. I really want my friends to succeed. But this year, I'm not trying to build a team that breaks the game or even gives me especially good matchups. I just want to use strong Pokemon that let me play the game in the way that feels best to me. Building a team that everyone can use isn't the same as building a team that I can master. And I think this style of team building is definitely the right approach for where I'm at. But it's not necessarily what's best for everyone else. Of course, it is possible that someone will strike gold with team building talk to everybody else about it until today. Luckily, I have world-class friends, and funnily enough, we're all on the same page about trying a different approach this year. Brendan pointed out that recently, we've all performed best by following our own individual Pokemon instincts. I think subconsciously, this is a step that a lot of us realized we were going to have to take, even though we hadn't talked about it. Speaking of my friends,
I gotta find a different dark power.
the friends who came with me to NAIC, I need to reevaluate my team with fresh eyes and see who actually got the rein on this journey to becoming the world champion. Right now, I am drowning in water types, and I need to find a way to get back to dry land. This one we're talking about is technically a water type, Calyrex Shadow Rider. I nicknamed mine Haunts, an homage to this image because my NAIC Calyrex was so tanky. If I want less water, I can obviously just change Calyrex's parent type to Fairy or something else, but Terra Water Calyrex is the horse I've got my money on for the race, and I'm not ready to change my bet just yet. Now, I don't want to give you the idea that nothing has to change and everything's, just fine and dandy as is. I am making
One more
a
lightning
very
Vivi? I can do that.
Haunts' training regimen. It's taking off the weights and going to run at max speed. At NAIC, I focused heavily on surviving multiple possible attacks at the cost of only being faster than Miraidon. When getting outrun by opposing Calyrex Shadow made the mirror match an uphill battle, and my lethargic movie was the reason that I lost the set. I am now sacrificing in order to get back to work on the side of the after all, I don't need to worry about surviving There's two candidates for the bench. I drop food.
Des Harkin, Creation Soldier, Marshmallow.
Seem like a weird choice for a team that doesn't really have a way to take advantage of the rain. But I drop food is vital for me if I don't want this standard slurping slaughter all the time. practice, they're not always best buddies. I hop online and I play a few practice games and whoa, this feels good. This feels really good. With Iron Hands on my side, my matchup is good. to do it.
Anyway, guys, it was an awesome event.
I have created a bit of a silly
400K.
problem for myself. I am winning too much. Yesterday I played a few high ladder games, and then I got a bit scared that my account was going to start attracting unwanted attention. So I made a new ult, and I went 21 and 1. The only loss was to a Pride on Fire that I